All right, so we have a 2003 Hyundai Santa Fe. Came in here for a few things. One of them was she said there was no throttle response. It was kind of falling on its face. The check engine light was not on, but I went ahead and scanned it. I drove and I kind of noticed it myself. And anyway, I ended up scanning it, and the Autel came up with the p0030 and the p0130, which is basically the heated control circuit, bank 1, sensor 1, and the O2 circuit, bank 1, sensor 1. So basically, bank 1, sensor 1, O2 sensor, both parts of it is failing, or that's what we're assuming. We'll do a quick, there's no other codes in the car. And like the other car, there's no other drivability issues, and so I'm not going to go real in depth on testing this out. We'll just make sure it's getting voltage and kind of go from there. This one's pretty hard to get to. It's the bank 1, sensor 1 on these Hyundai. This is the 2.7. Of course, is the one way back in the engine. This is a V6, so it's going to have a bank 1 and a bank 2. So it'll have bank 1, sensor 1, and a bank 2, sensor 1. So the bank 2, sensor 1 will be up here. Bank 2 on these V6 Hyundais is the front of the engine. And of course, the bank 1, the one that we have to replace, is in the back. I already pulled the pigtail apart behind here. It's way down in here. You can get your hand in there without removing anything and disconnect it. So I'm going to do a quick voltage check to make sure it's getting power to the wiring harness down there. And if it is, we're going to go ahead and replace it. It looks like it's pretty old, and like that Cobalt, we're not going to do a ton of tests on it because there's no other drivability issues, there's no other codes, and we're going to go ahead and trust the Autel. So what's the main thing you want to do? We want to check the wiring, make sure it is getting voltage down there. The wiring looks good. On these O2 sensors, always check over the wiring real good. Sometimes you can see them burnt, or they get hot, some of them will rest in the wrong spot. So always check that out really well. This car looks fine. So I got it disconnected, and we're going to check the voltage to that pigtail, make sure it's getting battery voltage, and then we'll go about removing that O2 sensor. Yeah. All right, so I got the connector off. This is the side that goes to your ECM, or your wiring harness. And you want to probe this bottom right connector and make sure it has battery voltage with the key on, engine off. And if you look at the meter up there, we have battery voltage about 12 volts. So we are getting power down to that sensor, so we're just going to go ahead and that's all the checks I'm going to perform on this. Like I said, this is not an in-depth video on O2 testing. There's other tests you can do with the scan tool, but since this car has no other codes, no other issues, and it's got over 100,000 miles, it looks like it's got the original O2 sensor in it. We're going to go ahead and pull it out, and it's going to be kind of a challenge. Transactional transmission in the way, it's way deep in there. I'll see if I can get you in there and show you where it's at, but I'm not sure how much I'll be able to show you. This bank 1, sensor 1 on these are going to be kind of a pain. So anyway, we'll go to that next. Alright, so we're actually on the car now. Here's your transaxle. And if you look right there, that is the O2 sensor we're going to go after. So I'm going to get my tool set up, and I'll kind of show you what I did to get this out. Like I said, there's not much room, especially if you have big hands or arms, and there's not much room for the tools up there. So anyway, I'll get set up and we'll see what we can do with it. Alright, I'm going to try to show you this the best I can. I got one of those side O2 sensor sockets. I actually have a swivel on it, and then a really long extension that I got. Goes all the way out past the control arm with a long ratchet. And that's how I broke it loose. It's loose now, so now all I have to do is just take that socket off. I should be able to turn it out by hand, or almost turn it out by hand. So that's the way that I did it. There may be other ways, but that's the easiest way I found. Just a super long socket with a swivel on it, and that kind of O2 sensor socket. So anyway, I'll pull it out and I'll kind of show you the setup. Alright, so this is what I used to get that out. I used a long extension, and then a swivel on the end. and a pretty long ratchet because they're pretty tight. This is the O2 sensor tool I use. Just because that sensor was pretty tall. A lot of people use these too, which is normally what I use, but I had to really press hard on it to keep it on the sensor, and I didn't. The wires were all bunched up. This is where the wires go, but for whatever reason, it was kind of a struggle to keep this on. So I ended up using this one. This one actually worked really well because it kind of off-centered it more towards the extension I had going through there. And the plug's back here. I've already got it plugged in. But the plug's back here underneath your air box. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and button it up. You probably have to remove the air box. I did just to film it a little bit better. And the other thing I didn't check, I checked it off camera. I forgot to film it actually. You want to hook your simple test light to the positive side of your battery. And I think it was it's either the wire or the gray wire that was on here. That needs to be ground. So just tap that, you have it unplugged and just hook onto that. It should light your test light. If your test light is on positive, then obviously the ground would light your test light. So if you have a good ground, which this one did, when you tap it, when you touch it to that terminal, it should light your test light up. So anyway, that's where they're at now. If you had a bank 2 sensor 1, like I said, that's the front head here. And then if you have any sensor 2s, then that's after the catalytic converter. So, and the hardest one to get to on these Santa Fe's is the bank 1 sensor 1. The other one I saw, the sensor 2 was down there. It's pretty accessible. So anyway, it's just a little short video where it's at, which bank it is, and how to remove it, or easiest way I found to remove it. I mean, you might be able to get your hand up there and use a regular socket with no extension. I couldn't really get leverage, and my arm barely fits in that hole, so I just moved it out to where I could get my arm and got it out. So anyway, we'll put it back together the rest of the way. Alright, so this is a little thing on this Hyundai with the O2 sensor. I actually put that in and took it for a test drive, and the one I got, the brand new sensor, just flatlined. And of course the code came back right away. Car was running the same. So anyway, that was a brand new sensor, and it was dead as soon as I installed it. So this line, you can see these lines going up and down, which is the O2 switching back and forth, and that was just flatlined all the way across. So they ended up getting me another one and put it in. The car runs great, and you can see here it's doing its job. So that's when it comes in handy to have a scan tool like this. If you get a part, sometimes these brand new parts even, just don't work. And a lot of times it's better just to go to OEM or whatever, but sometimes that's not financially smart. So anyway, it's a Bosch O2. I've actually have another Bosch O2 I put in last week that's messing up. So that's 2 Bosch O2s I've had that are bad in less than a week. Which usually I have good luck, but I don't know. Anyway, this is just a little follow-up on the O2 sensor on that 03 Santa Fe. So I think this one's good to go, and yep, I have to go and get the other car back with the other bad O2 sensor. That one came in with the heater circuit failure, and we drove it a little bit, and they drove it, and then the light came back on, and now it's got a p0130, which is a lazy O2 sensor. So anyway, that's where we're at with these O2 sensors this week.